Hollywood is filled with stories we never heard while the cameras were rolling. Some stars lit up the screen for decades, yet kept a part of themselves hidden from the world. A few came out late in life. Others never did, and only after their passing did the truth emerge. Today, we're remembering 15 actors you may not have known were gay and the lives they kept behind closed doors. To millions, Raymond Burr was the iron-willed Perry Mason, the defense attorney who never lost a case. Off-screen, he was just as skilled at building a case, only this one was about himself. He spoke publicly of a wife who died, a son lost too young, even wartime injuries, all invented. In reality, Burr was gay, and in mid-century Hollywood, being out could end a career overnight. Those stories became a shield, allowing him to keep working while protecting his personal life from press scrutiny. His real partner, actor Robert Benavides, stood by his side for more than 30 years, quietly sharing a life that few outsiders knew existed. Burr never came out publicly, not even near the end. But those who knew him remember a man fiercely loyal, intensely private, and deeply devoted to the person he loved, even if the world never got to see that chapter of his story. Best known as the pompous but endearing Major Charles Winchester III on MASH, David Ogden Stiers built a career on characters full of wit and warmth. Off-screen, he kept his personal life entirely separate from the spotlight. It wasn't until 2009, decades after MASH ended, that Stiers came out publicly as gay, explaining he'd stayed silent to avoid jeopardizing his acting opportunities. By then, he had already voiced beloved Disney characters in Beauty and the Beast, Pocahontas, and The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and earned multiple Emmy nominations. Friends describe him as gentle, fiercely intelligent, and endlessly curious. Someone who chose privacy not out of shame, but out of a deep desire to control his own narrative. Stiers passed away in 2018 at 75 from bladder cancer. His late-life honesty gave fans a more complete picture of the man behind the characters, revealing a personal integrity as notable as his work. Earl Holliman's career spanned from 1950s sci-fi classics like Forbidden Planet to long-running TV hits such as Policewoman. His on-screen persona was rugged, charming, and effortlessly masculine, the sort of presence that, in Hollywood's golden era, often came with its own expectations. Holliman never publicly discussed his sexuality, keeping his private life carefully guarded. It wasn't until his death in November 2024, at the age of 96, that his husband, Craig Curtis, confirmed they had been married for years. That revelation surprised many fans who had followed his career for decades. Holliman's discretion reflected the realities of his time. Coming out could have meant the end of leading roles and career stability, yet behind closed doors, he lived a committed, enduring love story. Roddy McDowall grew up in front of the camera, first as a child star in the 1940s, then as a versatile adult actor in Planet of the Apes, Cleopatra, and countless TV appearances. While his sexuality was never a public topic during his lifetime, within Hollywood circles it was an open secret. McDowall valued privacy, not only for himself, but also for the many stars who trusted him with theirs. Known as an avid photographer, he captured intimate portraits of his friends, both literal and emotional snapshots of a Hollywood few ever saw. He never made a formal coming-out statement, but he also never lived a life that denied who he was to those who mattered. McDowall died in 1998 at age 70 from cancer. For those who knew him best, his greatest role may have been that of a steadfast friend. Danny Lokin's smile lit up the screen in the 1969 film adaptation of Hello, Dolly, where he played the lovable Barnaby Tucker opposite Barbra Streisand. Off-screen, his career faltered after Broadway, and his personal life became more private. In August 1977, just hours after leaving a gay bar in Anaheim, Lokin was brutally murdered in a stranger's apartment. The tragedy made headlines, but coverage often glossed over the reality of his sexuality, focusing instead on sensational trial details. His killer was convicted of voluntary manslaughter, serving only a fraction of his sentence. Locken's death became a haunting reminder of how dangerous it could be to live openly, even partially, as a gay man in the 1970s. He was just 34 years old. Today, he's remembered by theater fans for his boundless energy on stage, and by historians as one of Broadway's bright young talents whose story ended far too soon. Richard Chamberlain was America's golden boy in the 1960s, winning hearts as Dr. Kildare and later in sweeping miniseries like The Thornbirds and Shogun. Off-screen, he became a master at deflecting questions about his personal life. In an era when being labeled gay could end a leading man's career, Chamberlain carefully maintained a neutral public persona. It wasn't until his 2003 memoir Shattered Love, at age 69, that he came out publicly. By then, his career was secure, and he felt free to tell the truth. Chamberlain passed away on March 29, 2025, 2 days shy of his 91st birthday, from complications following a stroke. He left behind not just a body of acclaimed work, but also a late-life example of how timing one's truth can be both a survival strategy and a final act of self-liberation. His fans will remember the charm, the elegance, and the quiet bravery. George Maharis shot to fame in the early 1960s as Buzz Murdoch on Route 66, a role that made him a TV heartthrob. Behind the scenes, however, Maharis faced legal trouble and public scandal that hinted at a truth he never confirmed during his lifetime. In 1967, he was arrested for lewd conduct in a men's restroom, an incident that, in the homophobic climate of the time, could destroy a career. Maharis kept working, taking on roles in TV and film, but the public's perception of him had changed. He never addressed his sexuality publicly, choosing instead to let his work speak for itself. When he died in 2023 at age 94, obituaries celebrated his rugged charisma, but largely sidestepped the struggles he faced as a gay man in mid-century America. For those who read between the lines, Maharis's life is a testament to resilience in the face of quiet prejudice. Rock Hudson was the ultimate leading man, tall, handsome, and effortlessly charming in romantic dramas like Pillow Talk. He was also Hollywood's best-kept secret, with studios going to great lengths to keep his sexuality hidden from the public. Hudson's relationships with men were known within industry circles, but he maintained the public image of a heterosexual bachelor. That facade cracked in 1985, when Hudson became one of the first major celebrities to die from AIDS-related complications. His illness and death forced an unprecedented public conversation about AIDS and homosexuality, changing the national dialogue almost overnight. Hudson's courage in facing his final months publicly helped humanize the epidemic and galvanized activism. He was 59 when he passed, leaving behind a film legacy and a social impact far beyond his roles. For many, he remains the face of both Hollywood glamour and the human cost of living in secrecy. Best remembered as Norman Bates in Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, Anthony Perkins had the kind of career that demanded public adoration, and in mid-century America, that meant playing it straight off-screen. Perkins had relationships with men throughout his life, including with dancer-choreographer Grover Dale, but married actress Barry Berenson in 1973. Friends say he viewed the marriage as both genuine companionship and a shield against public scrutiny. Perkins never publicly discussed his sexuality, but in 1992 he died from AIDS-related pneumonia at the age of 60, and the truth about his private life began to emerge more widely. Berenson herself died tragically in the September 11th attacks. Perkins's legacy is forever linked to his iconic role in Psycho, but his personal story also reflects the pressures, compromises, and quiet acts of love that defined the lives of many gay actors of his era. British character actor Denholm Elliott brought depth and sly humor to films like Raiders of the Lost Ark and A Room with a View. While he never publicly discussed his sexuality, Elliott lived openly within his private circles and was known for his wit, charm, and warmth. In 1987, he was diagnosed with HIV, and by 1992, he had died from AIDS-related tuberculosis at the age of 70. His widow, actress Susan Robinson, later confirmed that he had been bisexual, but in a time when labels carried heavy stigma, Elliott preferred to let his work define him. His career spanned over 120 film and television roles, and he was nominated for 3 consecutive BAFTAs, winning twice. Elliott's life and death serve as a reminder of the many talents lost to AIDS and of how much richer our cultural history might have been had society allowed more people to live and love openly. Christopher Burnell was a commanding presence on daytime TV, best known as the cunning, sophisticated Alan Spaulding on Guiding Light. On screen, he exuded power and charm. Off-screen, he lived as an openly gay man among friends, but never addressed it publicly in interviews. In the late 1980s, when AIDS was claiming countless lives in the entertainment industry, Burnell's sudden disappearance from the show sparked rumors. He returned briefly, but in 1989, at just 49, he died from a heart attack brought on by complications from AIDS. At first, it was written off in the press as death by natural causes, a reflection of the stigma and secrecy surrounding the epidemic at the time. For many fans, the news was both shocking and unspoken. His legacy isn't just in his polished performances, it's in the grace with which he navigated a career when being openly gay could have cost him everything. In the 1950s, George Nader had all the makings of a Hollywood leading man. Chiseled looks, a warm voice, and a breakout role in Robot Monster, a B-movie that gained cult status. He signed with Universal and starred in a string of films and TV series, including The Man and the Challenge. But Nader's career took a quiet, deliberate turn after a scandal that never made headlines. Not about him, but about his friend, Rock Hudson. Rumors of Hudson's sexuality began to swirl, and the studio needed a scapegoat to divert attention. Nader, who was gay and already navigating industry suspicion, was quietly pushed aside. Rather than fight, he chose reinvention. He moved to Europe, starred in German spy films, and later became a novelist, even penning a sci-fi book with openly gay themes. Nader died in 2002 at the age of 80 from cardiopulmonary failure. He had lived for over 50 years with his partner Mark Miller and stayed by Hudson's side during his final days. Michael Greer broke ground in an era when almost no one in Hollywood dared to be openly gay. Known for The Gay Deceivers and Fortune and Men's Eyes, Greer didn't just take roles that hinted at queerness, he inhabited them with pride. He refused to play gay characters as stereotypes, often rewriting lines to give them dignity and authenticity. This outspokenness cost him work in mainstream film and TV, but it also earned him a devoted following. By the late 1990s, his career had shifted towards stand-up comedy and live performance. Greer died in 2002 at 64 from lung cancer, but his trailblazing spirit still resonates. He didn't just live as himself, he demanded his characters do the same, long before it was safe or popular to do so. That courage, paired with his talent, made him unforgettable to those who saw him perform. Al Parker wasn't a mainstream Hollywood name, but in the gay adult film industry of the 1970s and 80s, he was a superstar. His clean-cut looks and athletic build made him a symbol of the era's sexual liberation, while off-camera, he was a savvy businessman who directed and produced films. Parker lived openly as a gay man, but like many of his peers, he faced the looming specter of AIDS. In 1992, at the age of 40, he died from complications related to the disease. His openness was radical in its own right, and in remembering him, we also remember the countless others whose names never made the headlines but whose lives shaped queer visibility. For decades, Paul Reubens was inseparable from his quirky alter ego, Pee Wee Herman, a character that brought joy to millions and became a pop culture fixture. Off-screen, Reubens kept his private life guarded, deflecting questions with humor and focusing on his work. It wasn't until a 2024 posthumous documentary that friends and collaborators confirmed he had been gay, a fact he had chosen not to share publicly. Reubens died in July 2023 at 70 after a private battle with cancer. Knowing this truth after his passing reframes the man behind the bow tie, someone who understood the risks of openness in the early years of his career, yet still built a body of work filled with eccentricity, creativity, and joy. For fans, the revelation didn't change the love they felt for him. If anything, it deepened it. Sometimes, the most personal truths come to light only when the curtain falls. 15 lives, 15 different paths through an industry that often demanded silence. Some guarded their truth to protect their careers. Others lived openly in smaller circles, quietly changing the lives of those around them. Together, their stories map the shifting landscape of Hollywood, from a place where secrecy was survival to one where honesty is increasingly possible. Remembering them isn't just about uncovering secrets. It's about honoring the choices they made in the context of their time and the courage it took to be themselves in ways big or small. If you value keeping these histories alive, subscribe for more stories like this, because every name here carries a piece of our cultural memory. And I'd like to know, which of these actors' stories surprised you most today?